Hey guys, what's happening? Yeah, it's been a while since I've ever made a video. It's probably been at least a year since I've made any kind of videos for either of the channels that I make content for. But this one, I mean, this is obviously a very special time in our history, not just our lifetimes, but in history, because this U.S. presidential election could change things forever. Um, I know, I mean, in my opinion, many of the last couple have changed things for on astronomical um, scale, I guess you could say. But this one is the biggest, at least in my lifetime. Um, but this video goes out to millennials, people who are around my age. Those of you who are old enough to vote, so 18 to even if you're in your early 30s or a little bit older than that even, this is going out to you because a lot of a lot of older people, they have their they have their sources. They're sort of grounded in um, their own opinion, and they're not likely to change. However, millennials, the young people, are the ones who are the most malleable as far as picking a political side and sticking with it. So, why am I specifically targeting millennials to prove my point? Because if we look at historically, or just as a stereotype, if I started this video and I didn't say who I'm voting for, which I haven't yet, and we go back a couple months before the primaries were over, you would probably assume that I lean a bit left, that I'm probably voting for Bernie Sanders. Why? Because most young people seemed to gravitate toward Bernie Sanders. Um, that's not the case with me. I Let me start by saying this. I don't particularly like either candidate right now. And no, I didn't like Bernie Sanders either. I don't think socialism is the right fit for our country. It has its benefits in other countries, but it has to be the right fit. Uh, you can't just say this works for these people, so it'll work for you. No, it never works like that in any field ever, whether it be like your medical needs, your psychological needs, your emotional, like anything, physiological. Nobody ever says, this works for this person who has something completely different problem wise, so this will work for you. It doesn't work that way. You can't just say, oh, well, socialism works in, I don't know, insert country here, so it'll work for the US. That's such a, so misinformed, in my opinion. Like, you can't just say that socialism is going to work for the US because it worked for another country. It has failed many countries, and it's worked for many countries for a time. It, it's just not right, especially for our culture. Um, we really do live in a culture where capitalism, while it's not perfect, it's not even great in some cases. It's still like the best of the worst for us because no governments have been 100% successful. That's just how it is. We're humans, we're not perfect. And so, look, I can understand why a lot of young people have gravitated towards Bernie Sanders. That's because he offered you free college. No shit. I mean, look, I don't want this to sound condescending, even though it will come across as condescending, I have no doubts. But you don't think that a guy who's going to offer young people free college or free education in general, um, like I said, there's a lot of people who have turned 18 this year, so they're about to go to college, or perhaps they're a little bit older and they were holding out on college because of the costs. Um, I know I took about a year off before I went into college, and not because of costs, but for other reasons. So you can understand why some people have gravitated towards him and have accepted the ideas that are classically conditioned with having free college, free education. But I think a lot of millennials don't have the perspective that some of the older people do, because while a lot of older people have been young people haven't been old people. Um, because once you get into the workforce, then all of a sudden you're paying a whole lot more tax. And you're paying into that free education. The free education has to come from somewhere. It doesn't just come from osmosis. The money has to come from somewhere. And guess where that comes from? It comes from taxpayers. And so while they say, yeah, the middle class is going to be cut, it's going to be the lowest taxes, it's bullshit. It's, in fact, while the top is going to be paying a huge tax, still the middle class is going to be paying a lot in taxes. Look at Switzerland. They have, people from outside the country are like, they have free education, they have free healthcare, they have this and that and this. It's like, it's great. And then you realize they're paying, on average, 55% tax. More than half of what they make goes straight to the government. And there's a high suicide rate in Switzerland because of that. Um, so, again, young people, you have to put things into perspective. And I'm putting myself into that category too. I Sometimes I don't have perspective because, again, I haven't been old. I'm in my 20s, but I do my best to try to look at things from the other side, or look at things from somebody else's eyes. Um, if you look at Switzerland, again, they're paying on average 55% tax. That's not okay. Um, so again, the free education, free healthcare, free this and free that, it's great, but we don't have the money to support that, especially when we're $20 trillion in debt. It's we can't sustain that. And so, you know, the this that's why I say socialism is not the right fit. It really isn't, especially not for the US. Moving on from that, Bernie Sanders was right about a few things, and that's another reason why a lot of young people uh, chose Bernie over Hillary, is because he sought to get rid of corruption, at least some of it or most of it. He was the one, before Donald Trump was going ham on Hillary, he was talking about how she received massive amounts of money, like money that you and I will never make in our lifetime, from Wall Street and Goldman Sachs and this place and that place, like banks and incredibly wealthy places to speak, um, in order to keep doing what they're doing, whether it be illegal or just bypassing certain laws or whatever. Um, we don't know the full details because they'll never release that, because then they would be obviously shown as corrupt, and they would probably collapse in some case. I don't know if any decent prosecutorial system would go after them. Which, by the way, our justice system right now is absolutely shot. But I'll get to that. I'll get to that later. So that was another good reason why a lot of young people have gone to Bernie Sanders. But he's out of the race. So we shouldn't even be talking about him right now. But again, I want to extend that olive branch to young people, people my age or slightly younger, slightly older. I get it. I do get why you went to Bernie Sanders, but it's not about that right now. It's really not. Look, between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, the the primary choice you have is, do you want egomaniac, a self-serving egomaniac with a bad mouth, or do you want a self-serving egomaniac who is a criminal? To me, the choice is clear. Either way, we still have an egomaniac, a psychopath slash sociopath in the White House. Either way. However, one of them is a criminal. One of them has not been proven to be a criminal. Whether or not he is or not, who knows? Um, but Hillary is a criminal. she has she has done many things that would be considered treason. And when Trump says that people's lives have been ruined for far less, it's the truth. It is the freaking truth. I mean, it's literally treason to give out classified information. And well, I'll get back to that. So again, why let's go into why I think, you know, we should we should wake up as a generation and stop believing what the left is telling us. Um, because I'll admit I'm part of that. For a couple years, I used to believe a lot of things that the left was giving us, and it was all bullshit. What I mean by the left are your social justice warriors, triggered feminists, whatever, um, Black Lives Matter activists. Yeah, come at me. Whatever. I don't care. It's fine. Um, it's the progressive left has controlled. They've basically had the voice of America by the balls for almost a decade now. And it's gotten worse over the past 8 years during Obama's administration. I'm not going to say he was the worst president. Not this. He's certainly not the best. Certainly not the worst. Whatever. I don't know who's the worst. I haven't researched every single president. But one thing he has done, he has been extremely divisive by giving voice and legitimizing a certain amount of progressive left factions, if you will, like the feminists who aren't really feminists. They don't really want equality. They want superiority, or they just want special treatment. There are real feminists in this country. There are women who just want equality. And the ones that actually want equality are the ones that really probably aren't speaking that much, because guess what? This, it's not so bad for women anymore. It really isn't, on average, on the whole, at least in the US. I'm not speaking about other countries right now. We're talking about in the US. It's it's still it's pretty close. And again, if you look at Christina Hoff Sommers, she has a lot of information that she gets from official government sources that even say that women are doing better in education right now, and they're more likely to be hired in, I believe, STEM. So there are certain areas where men do better. There are certain areas where women do better, and there are certain areas where they're equal. So am I going to say that it's perfectly level? I don't know. I'm not an economist. I'm not a gender studies expert, but it's not so bad. I think most of us that are reasonable can agree to that. But the left is still trying to push this agenda, and I'll tell you why. It's because over the past 8 years, the progressive left has tried to push this. They have repeatedly said a certain amount of things to you over the past certain amount of years so that you'll believe them eventually. If you repeat it long enough, even they'll believe it's true. And it's all to stay in power. That's it. Even if they didn't believe it at first, they say a lot of things that would be anti-Republican, anti-conservative over and over and over for years until you believe it, so that you stick with the Democratic Party. And you can call me a conspiracy theorist, but it's basic common knowledge that they're going to say anything to win. That's how politics works. You say anything you need to in order to win. And again, the media is primarily controlled by the left. It is. Now look, I know I'm going hard on the left. Obviously the right has their issues too. They'll do the same thing. I believe, if Donald Trump does get elected and somehow gets reelected, maybe they'll do the same thing over the next 8 years. Even over the next 4 years, they might do the same thing. They might say a lot of things anti-liberal, anti-whatever, enough times so that you believe it, so that you'll stick with the right and keep them in power. Maybe they'll do that. But I think we still need to look at what the progressive left has been doing over the past couple of years. It's literally what they've been doing. They've been talking about the wage gap as if it's still the exact same as it's been 8 years ago. It's not. If you look at just Milo Yiannopoulos, I know he's a troll, he's a provocateur, but a lot of things that he says make sense and they're true. He's looking at the facts. He's looking at data, pure data. Um, and it's not. And when you still see the 79 cents to a dollar, whatever, we're talking about a broad stroke of every single job in the U.S. and every single man and woman. They're not taking into account the same job. They're not taking into account life choices. And I think that's so misleading, but the left is going to continue to say it so that when a Republican says otherwise, you say, "Oh no, you're a bigot. You are a misogynist. Oh, nope, I'm not going to vote for you." Because let's be honest. If we look at this election, just zoom out for a second. Pretend you weren't going to vote for either of them. You had no interest in this, and you actually looked at this objectively. Every time something new comes out about Hillary, what have they fallen back on in response? Racism, Islamophobic, any kind of bigotry, misogynism, anything. That's all they've been able to fall back on. And that tells you, and people believe it. People go crazy over it and they say, "Oh, he's a racist, I'm not going to vote for him." And yet, like, more scandal, like criminal things are coming out about Hillary, and people are going, "Oh, he's racist, he's a bigot, he's this, he's that, he's that." And it's really just speaking volumes to what I'm saying. It's like they've been saying over years, "Oh, if you say one thing bad about one Muslim, you're Islamophobic, or one thing bad about one woman, you are a misogynist, you're a chauvinist, you hate women." And it's simply not true. Is Donald Trump racist? Maybe. I don't know. Have the things he said been particularly racist? Not really. If you really look at what he says, they're not as racist as you might think. So let's tackle one of them. The one that is probably the most repeated is the stuff that he said about Mexicans, the stuff um, about being rapists and drug lords and whatever. And at face value, you're like, okay, so he's racist against Mexicans. Not really. What he actually said was that there are people who are coming across the border who happen to be rapists and drug lords. And that's true. That's the facts. The facts are that drugs are pouring over the border into Texas and Arizona, and a lot of them have problems with heroin and other drugs. Those are the facts. That's not just that's not just hate or it's not hate speech against Mexicans. That's the truth. And yes, there are reported rapes from illegal aliens coming across the border, and there are shootings and killings from people that are coming across the border. That is the facts. That's just the facts. Like I'm saying, it's not it's not racist to speak the facts. Look, let's say you were in one school and next to you there was a neighboring school, and the two of you got along relatively well, but every now and then a couple people from your neighboring school came over and just started beating up people from your school and then just fled back to their school. And you take it up with somebody and say, look, there are people from West High or whatever who are coming into our school, East High, and they're attacking some of our people. Would you immediately pull back and say, "Oh no, that's racist. No, we can't do that. That's racist against their school. We can't say anything bad about people from their school, otherwise we're calling the whole school bad." Like, no. That's, for one, that's a logical fallacy. That's a slippery slope. Or a hasty generalization, whichever you prefer. Either way, it's a fallacy. It's stupid. And it's the same exact thing with Mexico and the US. There are people coming across the border from Mexico and they're harming our citizens. And yes, they happen to be Mexican. That's all that Donald Trump was saying. It's not racist to call out people from another country for screwing with us. Okay? And no, and it's not Islamophobic to tell other Muslims that you have to report your fellow Muslims if they are doing something suspicious or doing something that seems bad. Like, for example, the guy with bombs all over his floor in San Bernardino. And now the media wants to spin that and say that no, that there's no evidence that anybody knew. It's bullshit. There was testimony about that people didn't want to seem Islamophobic. So, it's again, it's the media. They have everything by the balls at this point. You look at just about every media outlet except a couple like Fox News and whatever. They're all literally designed to try to make Donald Trump or any Republican as bad as possible. And for more of that, let's take a closer look. You see what I'm saying? Um, they're not, and no, they're not comedians. They're not even funny, to tell you the truth. Except Stephen Colbert can be funny at times. I'll admit, I do I like his Hunger for Power games, and sometimes he can be kind of funny. But Seth Meyers is not even funny at all. Let's be fair. Like, most of what he says, like, he's not even hiding the fact that he's being paid. Like, it's obvious that he's being paid by the network to make Donald Trump look as bad as possible. Like, he's not even hiding it well if he's trying to hide it. He's not hiding it well because literally every other thing he says when it comes to politics is Donald Trump's a bigot. He's a racist. He's a bigot. He's a racist. He's a bigot. He's a homophobic. He's a misogynist. He's a bigot. He's bigot, 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 bigot. It's like some of us are just not buying it anymore, you know? There is a backlash from this clampdown on free speech, to say it. I hate to say it, but a lot of the progressive left are anti-free speech, because anytime an opinion just differs from them, oh, he's a bigot. That's it. And a lot of people follow it because over the past 8 years, they've been drilling into your head that any opinion that differs from ours, you're a bigot. That's it. That is the bottom line. So, that being said, Donald Trump versus Hillary Clinton. Again, is Donald Trump misogynistic? Well, maybe. There's a little bit more evidence to suggest that, yeah, maybe he is. But, again, a lot of people have been painting him with a broad brushstroke, with where he called Rosie O'Donnell, I think, fat or whatever. He said some pretty nasty things about Rosie O'Donnell, and people assumed that he felt that way about all women. And I'm like, I'm gonna get close to the camera because this is for you women. Do you really think Rosie O'Donnell represents you? Does that represent all women? I don't think so. If it does, you should be ashamed of yourself. Okay? I'm just saying. Like, one woman, or even 5 or 10 women, do not represent the entirety of the gender or sex, whatever you prefer. Okay? Yes, he has said bad things about women he does not like. Guess what? He said bad things about men that he doesn't like. So, again, it's a rose-colored glass. It's a slippery slope or a hasty generalization, whichever you prefer. Just because he said bad things about a couple women doesn't mean he said about all women. Okay? And yes, he did, do the grab by the pussy thing, He said, I just start kissing, whatever. That, the Access Hollywood tape. Yeah, he said he was ashamed of it, which he should be. Except, Hillary has said bad things too. And nobody wants to acknowledge it. Yeah, she viciously attacked the rape victims from Bill Clinton. Yeah, you want to talk about, the left wants to talk about rape culture. And here is your candidate defending a rapist. Is that okay? No, obviously it's not. And yes, we're talking about a couple decades ago. And a decade ago for Trump. So there we go. So it's like, you're going back as far as you can to find bad stuff. I can do it too for Hillary. It's not hard. And if you look in today, she called, again, you all know this if you've seen the debate, she called half of Donald Trump supporters a basket of deplorables. Keep in mind, if Hillary Clinton wins this election, she's president over those basket of deplorables. Your job is not to be the president for the people that voted for you. You are supposed to rule, in a sense, over every American. So, again, you have a president, if you are a basket of deplorable, you have a president who hates you, essentially, who has called you irredeemable. Do you honestly want a president like that? Again, your friend, you might be a leftist, and your friend might support Donald Trump. So, she might have insulted your friend. That's what I'm saying, like, and yeah, or maybe your friend is a closet Trump supporter. That's what I'm saying, like, we're talking about millions and millions and millions of Americans who she called irredeemable, and deplorable, as opposed to Donald Trump, who is called a few people who have come over the border rapists and drug lords, and some Syrian refugees, terrorists, whatever. Again, we're talking about at the most a couple thousand versus millions. So you want to talk about who has the more hate-driven campaign? It's actually Hillary Clinton. And I think Mike Pence did a good job of explaining that in the VP debate. Mike Pence, he did a good job. I think unfortunately, if he does win it and gets assassinated for any reason, Pence wouldn't be half bad. Um, in fact, he might be better than Trump because he might be a more controlled version. Because I'll be honest, I don't like the fact that Donald Trump can't keep his mouth shut even on Twitter. But to be fair, neither does Hillary. So again, I want to reiterate because this is a long video. I'm not a Trump supporter so much as I am against Hillary because she is, in my opinion, worse. I don't care how bad you think Trump is, she is worse. Again, bringing back to the criminal stuff. If you ignored everything, if you ignored the policies, you know what? Let me get to the policy real quick. We can debate about energy and everything, but when we talk about trade, I think it's very clear that Trump has the better policy when it comes to trade. The other policies are debatable. It's hard to say, but I think when it comes to trade and overall economics, I think Trump is more solid, and I think that comes from his business background. It naturally does translate. Not everything from being a businessman does translate, but I think this does. When we talk about companies that are leaving the U.S. to go to Mexico, China, Japan, wherever, they're selling their product over the border with no charge. Essentially, the only thing they have to pay is for import, which is still going into their economy. The problem is, again, we're afraid of looking like bigots because we don't want companies to leave our country, but when they do go, we don't want to like say, "Hey, come back," because then we'll look like bigots for some reason. Look, if a company leaves your country, they're not going to be adding to your GDP. They're not going to be circulating any money into your economy. And again, it's basic economics. When you import more than you export, you lose money. It is simple economics. That's one of the reasons why we're $20 trillion in debt. Just one of the reasons, but it's a big reason. People like Carrier, Nabisco, what Donald Trump has said is if they leave the country, fine. They're going to try not, he's going to try their best. He's going to call them, literally call them and say, please don't leave. But if they do, you have a 35% tax import for every air conditioner or every cookie you sell or every Oreo you sell over the border. And people act like that's a bad thing. Yes, tariffs were bad in the Civil War. We get that. But that was within the country. That was a North and South thing. And yeah, the North was being ridiculous. In this case, we're talking about refusal to circulate money into our economy because guess what? Taxes are too high. So again, that's another reason why I believe Trump is the better of the two candidates. Simply because when you look at taxes, they are too high for companies to survive. And yes, there is a time to raise taxes. There is a time for that. But there's also a time to lower them. This is the time to lower them, in my opinion. you have these companies that are suffering because they can't compete. Small businesses can't compete with the high taxes, and large businesses are losing out big time. And they have to close factories, they have to do this, they have to do that. They can't expand. Manufacturing is way down. And that's, again, Donald Trump has been saying this for months, that manufacturing is way down because taxes are too high for them. You and yes, when you do lower taxes on the top, yes, you do lose money in the government because they don't pay as much tax. It's that simple. But when you give them more incentives, you allow them to expand. They can hire more workers. You create more jobs. And when you have more jobs, they pay more taxes. Isn't I mean, that's also a simple thing. If you have more workers, you have more people paying tax. So it can even itself out if you have the right balance of certain length or certain height of taxes and certain amount of incentives to have certain amount of workers so that you can have certain amount of tax paid. There is a happy medium. It's hard to find. I don't know what it is. I'm not an economist, but it is simple economics that you have to find that balance. I do think Trump's taxes are too low, but they're better than Hillary's, in my opinion. We do need to lower taxes in general at this particular juncture, at this particular time. It's it's more important that we lower taxes right now. There will be times where we may have to raise taxes. It's all about what your needs are at that particular time. Um, so that being said, again, you know, when these companies are leaving our country, they're not paying taxes to our country. That's another thing. So again, we have this top 1% that the progressive left wants to pay an exorbitant amount of tax, and that's fine because the government gets more money. But what happens if they leave the country? Now, instead of getting a smaller portion of it, they're getting none of that tax because they're leaving the country and they're going to Mexico, they're going everywhere. So again, you can drive up taxes a little bit on the 1% at the very top, but you can't raise them to the point where they leave the country. They're they lose their money and they leave the country where the taxes are better or where they can sell across the border to the US and not have to pay the tax. So it's really sad that we can't acknowledge that as wrong as Trump can be on certain things, this is something that he is 100% spot on, is trade. Um, so ignoring, even if we ignored that, if we ignored, the fact that Hillary did this and that, the one, even if we ignore that Hillary is a criminal, even if we ignore all that, and we look at one last thing, this this is this one reason would make me vote Trump over Hillary Clinton if everything else was equal, which they're not. And that's who is around them. If we look at the email scandal, again, I am saying that we are ignoring that she's a criminal, but if we look at this scandal, it's exposed so much more corruption than just Hillary Clinton. We look at the FBI director, James Comey. He literally listed criminal things that she had done and then proceeded to say, we recommend no charges. Okay? The Attorney General, Loretta Lynch, refused to cooperate with Congress. Okay? Congress did their damnness to get some kind of oversight for the FBI, for the Attorney General, for the President, for Secretary Clinton. However, none of them were willing to cooperate properly. James Comey did a fair job of trying to cooperate, but he couldn't because his hands were tied. And it's really exposed that, President Obama, he has the Attorney General, the FBI Director, a lot of Congress, and potentially some of the Supreme Court in his pocket. And that's scary. So if we look at, again, and Hillary is another 4 years of Obama. And if she keeps Loretta Lynch as Attorney General, again, we have an Attorney General who can't even clarify the law. If you look at these videos, like, I'm not just saying this, I'm not making this up. You can look this up on the internet. You look at Trey Gowdy, Representative Gowdy, and Chavez questioning Loretta Lynch. You can see, you literally watch her sidestep every single question that involves clarifying the law. That's what an attorney does. She's the Attorney General, and she can't clarify the law to them because guess what? It would incriminate Hillary Clinton, potentially her, and potentially the FBI director, potentially President Obama, maybe. Who knows? And so it's really a scary thing when you look at how corrupt our government really is, to the point where Congress is phasing out at this point. They can't do shit as far as this whole scandal, this whole criminal thing, whatever you want to call it, this whole case is. Congress can't do a damn thing, and they've tried. They're providing oversight. What they have done is they provided us with a lot of videos and a lot of entertainment, to be perfectly frank, of watching Representative Gowdy tear everybody a new one. Even Chavez, he's pretty good. So I'm not saying that there aren't corrupt people on the right side. There definitely are. However, if we have Director Comey, we have Attorney General Lynch, and President Clinton, I guess, in office, nothing's going to change. This whole prosecutorial process, this justice system is not going to change, and it may even get worse because Hillary is, as far as we know, more corrupt than President Obama. And it's like I said, it's such a scary thing. It is. Where's the balance of power? There is none right now. Like all of the power right now is in the hands of the executive branch, and that is not what we set our country up to be. It's not how our government was designed. It was not designed that to allow the president to do whatever the hell he or she wants. And it really is insane when you have a president like President Obama who has said, with or without Congress, I will do this. He has said it. He has gone on record and said it, that I will do this and that with or without Congress. That is, again, that's tyranny in its purest form. That's exactly what it is. And so, as far as Donald Trump goes, there's a strong possibility that Representative Gowdy will become the Attorney General if Donald Trump gets elected. Even if Donald Trump was just as bad as Hillary Clinton, Representative Gowdy would make him in office much, much more appealing, just for the fact that he is miles, miles, miles and miles better than Loretta Lynch. It's not even close. That man is a shining beacon in Congress. And Dr. Ben Carson, who is, he whether you agree with his politics or not, he's a respectable man. That's better than the lying shit that we've been getting from all of this whole chaotic process. And again, going back to Bernie Sanders supporters, again, because this is to millennials, I'm just trying to let you guys know what the hell is going on here. Um, there is another video that gives you a lot of evidence. It's from, I believe this is the pronunciation is Sargon of Akkad. I'm going to link his video in the description because chances are you have seen him before me, but if you're a subscriber of me, not him, you probably haven't. He goes into great detail about how corrupt this whole fucking system is and why Hillary should lose, and yet she probably won't. So again, going back to Bernie Sanders supporters, um, you guys know what it's like to have the system rigged against you. There's literally proof. There's physical hard evidence that Hillary Clinton had the election rigged in her favor, and yet there was nothing done about it. And that is the core reason how you all know that she is corrupt to the bone, and that it's, again, why isn't anybody doing anything about it? It just really shows you the corruption in the executive branch, because the executive branch is the prosecutorial um, decision maker. Essentially, the executive branch is the branch to press charges. Congress can't do that. Congress can provide oversight, but they can't press charges. That is the executive branch's decision. Now, the judicial branch will make the ruling, but they can't prosecute either because they are the judges. You have to understand that. So again, the fact that they're not even prosecuting this clearly criminal and cheat just shows you that they just want to stay in power. And again, you can understand that, and I can respect the fact that they want to stay in power. Nobody wants to give up their own power. But again, by what means? What means are you going to do that? You're just going to cheat the system and, you know, and exonerate, not even exonerate, acquit, or not even acquit because there's no charges to begin with. You're gonna just you're just gonna let it all go in order for Hillary Clinton to stay in power. And that's the bottom line, is the left just wants to stay in power. And so they're going to do their damnedest to make Donald Trump look worse than he actually is. Is he bad? Yeah. Is he worse than Hillary Clinton? No. Not by a long shot. You might consider him an idiot. You might consider him loud and badmouth. You might consider him an egomaniac, egocentric. You might consider him a psychopath or a sociopath. All of those things are bad for a president. However, Hillary Clinton is just about all of those things and more. And again, one of them is a criminal, one of them is not. So, again, I have no idea how many views this video is going to get from millennials, or anybody, rather. But I have to say this. I had to get it off my chest. I've been waiting too long to not say it. I've been holding all this shit in from everybody. Um, so on November 8th, y'all have to get out and vote. It is a civic responsibility. But what I am asking you to do is at least reconsider, if you were voting for Hillary Clinton, at least reconsider why you were voting against Donald Trump. And is it worth putting a criminal in power? And is it worth keeping the justice system the way it is? Is it worth keeping Congress as irrelevant as they are right now? Is it worth letting millions, or thousands, not millions, thousands of Syrian refugees come in with the potential that even 1% of them are terrorists? Is it, even if they're not, is it worth them taking a lot of our American jobs? Is it worth not having strong borders and allowing, our companies, one, to leave to Mexico and not pay tax, and we lose a lot of our GDP? Is it worth it not to elect somebody that is vaguely bigoted, vaguely racist, vaguely misogynistic, vaguely Islamophobic? Is it worth that? In my opinion, it's not. To me, this, again, that's the picture that the left wants to paint of him, is that he is bigoted, he's racist, he's Islamophobic, whatever. But if you look at the evidence, it's vague at best. No one can know the heart. That's whether you believe the Bible or whether you are, whether you don't. It's the truth that you can't know the heart for sure. Whether or not he really has something against Mexicans or blacks or Latinos or anything, we don't know. It's impossible to know. But again, it's it's not worth putting Hillary Clinton in the seat of the President of the United States over vague biases, in my opinion. So, I don't expect everybody to agree with me. Um, Certainly, in the comments, you can disagree, say why, hopefully, with facts or, you know, strong logic and reasoning. I'm certainly open to discussion. But, again, um, if you've at least listened to everything I've said, I know I've been talking for a long ass time. This is a long video. I didn't want it to be this long, but I had to, because I have to explain my point. Um, and I think it does take a perspective from somebody who is your age, assumedly, if you're a millennial that's watching. It takes somebody from your age to explain the shit, to really understand why the left has been lying to you, and Hillary Clinton is lying to you even worse, specifically, and why she is the worst candidate potentially in the history of the United States. That's all I gotta say. So if you stuck with me through this whole thing, I applaud you, because I'm sure it was boring in some cases, but I applaud the shit out of you if you stay with me the whole time. Um, get out and vote on November 8th. This is the first time I'll be voting. I didn't vote in the last one, and I somewhat regret it. But this time, I feel like I have to vote, and I believe you should all vote. If you are able enough to vote, you should vote. And in my opinion, you should vote Donald Trump. For no other reason than Hillary Clinton is so much worse. And I know that's not a good campaign to run, is this person is worse, but in this case, it's necessary. So thank you guys for watching. I hope to make more videos sometime soon, hopefully. I don't know. When I grab a PS4, maybe I'll post videos of the new games that I get. And yeah, one last thing was, the reason this is on the Where Tiger X channel is because, again, I don't represent Team Mystic in its entirety. I may be the leader, I may be the one that does the most work in Team Mystic, but I don't represent Team Mystic. I can only represent myself with my opinion. So, yeah, once again, thank you guys for watching, and see you guys next time.